put me to work. And the guy said, well, he's over there. Then I noticed the guy was limping. I told him, I said, the guard told me to tell you to put me to work. And I'm supposed to come in tomorrow morning and get my physical. And I worked there for not all at that time, but I was there over 38 years.
So what did you do for them?
Oh, just about anything you can think of.
Is that right?
Yeah. But the job I had at AC Sparkplug was sweeping. And I did that till I got fired. Anyway, at DuPont, I was hired in for a short time, like 6 months. They'd lay me off. But then when they hired again, they'd call me back. So eventually I had 5 years. And then I got my full-time back after I worked 5 years. I had almost like a year's service by then, part-time, you know. But it was a good place to work. They were good people to work for.
That sounds great.
Yeah. And I ended up, I was kind of my own boss. I was the fireman in charge of the sprinkler systems and all that stuff. And we'd have fire drills in October usually in the city proving grounds for on the river, you know.
Wow.
And the shop made big pans about 4 by 8 size, and they were about that deep. And I would put different chemicals, and they had big hoses hooked up to the hydrants, and then they used the extinguishers to, we had like 5 different fire teams, a fire team for each department. And I had...
Was there ever a big fire?
No, we were very fortunate. We had 2 guys, and all the while I was there, got hurt a little bit by flash. See, all the tools were brass, so it wouldn't cause no spark.
Right.
And it worked pretty well. But what I feel now has given me breathing problems is I manufactured, we called it Duco cement. It was what the youngsters used to snip.
Glue.
You know.
Really?
Glue. And I manufactured that.
So did you ever feel like
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Because to filter through bags, they had made 2, it looked like a tennis racket made of brass, and I could hook them on the back and squeeze those bags at the material was like 300 and some degrees heat. So they had fans drawn out as much fumes as they could, and I had a mask, but it wasn't enough. A couple of times, well, I was standing on a little bench like, so I was tall enough to squeeze the bag and have it drop into a pan, and a spigot that would go into drums. I'd put it into drums, and we'd send it across the street to be put in tubes. And however, sometimes they put it in quarts, you know, for big use. But I ended up as a fire chief.
I'll be trying. And when did you retire?
I retired on the first day of March, 1977.
Wow.
I should have retired the last January, but I was on sick leave just before, and they wouldn't retire me while I was on sick leave. And of course I got full pay and that, so.
Well, now how did you meet, and where did you meet Leona?
Well, I met Leona at ball games. I was still on the milk route.
Okay, because she was living up in Alpena, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was right in Alpena. And I used to go, as a young kid, well, I'd say maybe 15 or so. Three of my cousins, older than us, and there was 4 of us boys, cousins. Their mother had died, Dad's sister. Their mother had died, and their brother and I and a couple other cousins, they taught us how to dance, the waltz, and I never did the tango, but just about anything else. Well, we knew how to square dance, you know, because that was the common thing to do. So going back to Leona, I'd go to these basketball games from guys I had played baseball with, and also this was during the winter. They played basketball, and I'd watch for the good dancers. Always these guys. We always looked for girls who were good dancers, no matter where I was. Even in Flint, or we used to go and visit the guys in Detroit. The same thing there. We went the big ballrooms there. We'd look for good dancers. There was a way that you could get 10 tickets for $1, and they had special dancers. You give them a ticket, and they dance a dance with you. You know, so you could dance with 10 different women. All you had to do is just give them a ticket. I never was refused, so I don't know. But there again, we looked for good dancers. And that's what I did. Leona and her sister were both good dancers.
So you met her at one of these dances?
Right.
And how old were you then, do you know?
Pardon me?
How old were the two of you at that point, do you remember?
How old I was at that time? Well, I must have been 18 maybe, because I was 19 when I went to Flint.
And so did she come down with you? When did you get married? Let's see.
Oh, we didn't get married till 40.
Yeah, that's much later.
But things were tough, you know, and we weren't really making that. And of course, her mother, see, her sister got married before we did. She was younger, but so that we had to change our time of getting married to later in the fall, because their dad, you knew, had drowned.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a different story. But I don't know. We made if she had lived 3 more weeks, we would have been married 62 years. Yeah. Yeah. She was a pretty girl, beautiful girl. But we messed up on the night of our wedding.
How's that?
Well, we were in a car accident.
Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. All in all, though, I think we were quite lucky. And, you know, the kids were good in school, all had good schooling, and all did quite well. All of them. Doris is working where Diana was working, you know. Diana sold out, you know.
I heard.
Yeah.
Good for her.
Yeah. And Gene's still at General Motors, but he has to drive to Mount Clemens, Chevrolet and Flint. And the Buick, of course, is where he's down at, and he's got quite a few years, but not enough to retire as far as years of work. Because he was a plumber outside of the shop, you know.
Well, let's go back to your father.
Okay.
So tell me about your father.
Well?
Where he was born and when and what you remember of his life.
Oh, okay. Well, as far as I can remember, they left the farm, Grandpa and the girls that were there, they moved to Valleyfield, and he worked in the cotton mill there for a short time. maybe 13 or so. He was 14 when they came to the state, but he didn't do a lot. He mentioned something about a cotton mill, and, but it wasn't something that he was at for very long. And then when Grandpa and the three boys, and I think 4 or 5 of the youngest daughters moved to Osneek.
Do you know what brought them to Michigan? What brought them to the States?
Well, they already had, Dad had some sisters here. And of course, that's where they came to, was Black River, yeah. And I think, from what I always understood, the girls stayed with their sister, older sister. And the boys, Grandpa had bought 5 40s of timberland between Black River and Osneek.
And this is Alfred?
Yes. And they couldn't raise anything when they found out the sand, but that was beautiful white pine timber all along the lake there. And so that's when they went over in '90 and bought the original farm on the corner of Spruce and Nicholson Hill Road there. See, that used to be M10 back then, the state highway.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, when did they buy that?
Pardon me?
Do you remember when they bought that?
Must have bought it in 1900.
1900, okay.
1900. And I think the men stayed in a logging camp the first winter. Then they built the house that they lived in. I don't know if all the boys stayed there. Dad was working lumber mills and so on at the time.